Hello and welcome to News 500. I'm Stephen Allen.
And I'm Rialina, and these are the headlines.
Man cuts off penis to spite his balls.
Feminists upset. Shocker.
And it's week 3 of an Ebola rollover.
A Google executive has broken the world record for the highest skydive this week. An Apple exec then tried to follow suit, but now they can't find him to verify as they're using Apple Maps.
Michael Fallon, the Minister for Defence, has been criticised over claims that some towns feel swamped by immigrants. If you're unsure if you live in a potentially swamped town, the best way to check is if your food tastes better and your toilet flushes.
The last British troops have pulled out of Afghanistan's Camp Bastion on what is being called B-Day. At its height, it was the size of Reading, with gyms, cinemas, a Pizza Hut, and the added benefit of being nowhere near Slough.
In the midst of the Ebola crisis, hypochondriacs in the UK have been reminiscing over the good old days when birds had the flu and mad cow disease was just an excuse for a really good barbecue. With more now, we go to our American correspondent who is reporting live from inside a hermetically sealed bubble deep under the Rocky Mountains.
Hello, Steve! Ebola has hit the US big time. The first case occurred in Dallas last month when a visitor from Liberia was diagnosed with the disease. Officials in Texas stated there was no risk to the public and the disease would not spread any further. Within a few days, 2 nurses who treated the initial patients were diagnosed with Ebola. Officials say they meant now there's no risk. They were just joshing before. The arrival of Ebola in Dallas has led to a number of school closures throughout the United States, including a school in Mississippi, over 450 miles away from Dallas, and in Ohio, over 1,200 miles away. Officials noted there was no scientific reason to close the schools, but they weren't going to let science around their kids. In response to the Dallas incident, anyone flying into the United States from an affected area must now arrive in specific cities. Some areas have attempted to place travelers under a mandatory quarantine for 21 days. There are concerns that this will put people off from traveling to those cities. However, Detroit has volunteered to take the Ebola victims because they felt it would be nice to have some people come to Detroit. Advocacy groups have claimed that the quarantine requirement could lead to racist profiling. An official denied any possibility of racism, saying that quarantine would only be required from people visiting from West Africa, countries neighboring West African countries, and the countries of neighbors of West African countries, and anyone who looked African. The same official denied that any of the measures indicated that they were acting hysterically. He stated, Run, dear God, run! We're all gonna die! That's it for now. I'm off to take a bath in chlorine. There's no reason to, but that doesn't matter. Back to you, Steve.
Thanks, Eric.
David Cameron was criticised this week for not wearing a t-shirt that read, "This is what a feminist looks like." Nigel Farage has offered to wear the shirt, but only if he can get it wet first. I haven't noticed you wear the t-shirt yet, Steve.
No, I think it needed ironing and those women hadn't done it. Jogger bumped into the Prime Minister this week, but Cameron was unharmed. He claimed it did make him drop the $1.7 billion that Britain owes the EU, so now he won't be able to pay. Jog on.
John Lydon, aka Johnny Rotten, has described Russell Brand as a bumhole. Brand has taken offence, claiming the term is bumholy-woly.
Robbie Williams filmed himself singing to his own songs while his wife was giving birth in the hospital bed next to him. She was on gas and air for the pain, but by the look on her face, she could still hear.
Asda are being sued by female workers who claim they are not paid the same salaries as their male counterparts. It brings a new meaning to a variety of Asda slogans, such as, "Why pay more?"
That's a good point. Why pay more?
Are you getting paid for this?
Homeowners who fail to control Japanese knotweed may face criminal prosecution under new laws. One reason people struggle with Japanese knotweed is that despite its name, it actually is a weed.
So you're getting paid for it. And now, Stuart Black with a public service announcement.
There's so many terrorist groups threatening the British way of life. It's hard to keep track. We've got ISIS, ISIL, IKEA. I mean, ISIS are terrifying. Apparently there's 30,000 of them now. Got that information from the CIA. Could be propaganda. I mean, they did release that on 9/11 while they were looking for support for an invasion. And there was a report in the CIA torture of people for years. So they're basically the boy that cried wolf of international politics. Or probably more like the boy that cried 30,000 wolves on the anniversary of a famous wolf attack while they wanted to invade a wolf country, and there was a report into the torturing of wolves, families of wolves, people with wolfy names. As bad as ISIS are, and it's horrific what they've done, but you'd think for a news group to take those stories and just pervert them to further their own agenda would be unthinkable. Not for Fox News in America. Who do they get from Britain to give our point of view? Somebody with his finger on the pulse? Nigel Farage, that prick. He went on American television and said that 40 years of multiculturalism has made us afraid to admit that we have a Christian constitution. That's bullshit. Fox News in America said that the decline in Christian values was responsible for the radicalization of Islam. If anything, it's the decline in US domestic crude oil stocks that's responsible, but Mark Twain said, never let the truth get in the way of a good story. Or as Rupert Murdoch prefers, never let the truth get in the way. He just likes that bit only. Fucking prick. And I burnt myself.
And that's why you shouldn't play with matches.
A Macedonian man, Oliver Illich, has cut off his penis in protest for being dumped for having a small penis. Illich has received support from other protesters worldwide, including a man in the US who shot himself in the foot to protest against gun control.
I'm sure he's taking solace in the fact that he's paid more. Russia has changed time zones, switching from being permanently in summertime to being permanently in wintertime. Putin claims the decision should bring the country closer to Europe, but Europe has responded that Western Ukraine is already too close.
There are now thought to be more than 100 British jihadi, known as Taliban tourists, going back and forth between the UK and Afghanistan.
How does that work?
They spend 6 months driving cabs in London, and then they go and fight with the Taliban for 6 months in Afghanistan.
I find that hard to believe. I had a driver the other night that couldn't find his way from Archway to Highbury, never mind Central Asia.
A regional chart of pocket money rates has London coming out on top, which makes sense, as London is very expensive. If your children have a Wendy house, they're at risk of paying the mansion tax.
Scotland came second. Some critics have said pocket money is why the UK has a benefits crisis. Pocket money teaches our children to take handouts from the people who make the rules, and just like claiming benefits, it happens a lot in Scotland.
And we leave you with this. Tesco's buttermilk has a nice new package in more ways than one.
Which is the perfect accompaniment for Iceland's mince pies. Mince pie, Eric?
Ah! Yeah! Run, dear God, run! We're all gonna die! Ah! That's it from us. To get your regular fix from News 500, subscribe now. The week's news in 500 seconds.
Ish.